Hello and welcome to the new video. Today we're gonna rank all the buffs for the Open Great League for this season. We're going to have the main buffs here. Of course, we cannot have every single one in there, but I have basically put every Pokemon in that got a new move, and I got every Pokemon in basically that is viable most likely with a new move update. We are not going to take a look here at the nerfs. We're going to take a look at this maybe at a separate video as well and see how impactful they are anyway. But yeah, we're going to take a look here at the buffs and see what they're going to be for the Open Great League. We're going to rank them quite fast. I don't really have as much time right now, so gonna be a little bit fast here today. Hopefully that's fine for you. But we're going to start off with Ampharos. Having access to Brutal Swing plus the buffed variant of the Trailblaze, both of them got buffed, is going to be really good for this Pokemon. Great coverage for this thing. Ariados. One of the Pokemon that got also buffed Trailblaze plus buffed Poison Sting, making this Pokemon insanely good Pokemon, as it's almost like there as well. I actually could see this Pokemon being S tier. Why? Because the meta is going to shift towards Fairy-type Pokemon. This is your anti-Fairy-type one, which is kind of hilarious because it was completely irrelevant before. Next one, we're going to have Breloom getting Force Bomb. I don't think this Pokemon is going to really have any impact, to be fair. Don't think it's going to help this Pokemon out. Of course, Counter got nerfed, so it doesn't really, does not impact it too much. We're going to have the Clefable next, having access to buffed Fairy plus buffed Swift, making this Pokemon instant S tier. I would imagine this Pokemon is going to be everywhere. Very, very strong Pokemon, very insane Pokemon. I think it's going to get nerfed eventually. We're going to have Clodsire next. I think, again, Poison Sting buff going to be very impactful for this next season, being able to destroy those Fairy-type Pokemon, going to be very, very crucial for it. We're going to have the Brutal Swing buff on the Conkeldurr, but sadly also you're going to have the counter nerf, and so I think Conkeldurr sadly going to lose all its value that it just gained from the Shadow bonus, which is kind of sad. But yeah, maybe actually even C tier. I think C tier is more accurate for it. I think it's a little bit of a buff for it, but it's not like crazy. Speaking of crazy buff, I think the Decidueye is going to be one of the best upcoming Pokemon. Having access to Astonish is going to make this Pokemon so much better now. Stab Astonish with all the damage output that this move now has is quite ridiculous, so definitely a good one. The other variant got access to the move Nightshade, not as great sadly, and so it's not going to be really as impactful for it. Parabolic Charge, we don't know yet on how good it's going to be, so we're going to put it into the B tier. It can have some impact for the Dedenne. It might be better than Discharge, but we don't know yet directly. Hopefully it's better than Discharge, by the way. I think it would be really cool to have Dedenne having a little bit more play. Poison Sting buff for Drapion, going to make it a bit better, but I don't think it's going to be too crazy good. Might be wrong with that, though. We have to see how the meta going to shift completely there anyway. We have Drifblim, which I could see being actually really good as well now, thanks to the Astonish buff, as you already have a very good coverage with Icy Wind and the Mystical Fire. This Pokemon has a lot of potential in the future for sure. Might be actually the time to shine for this thing finally here, but we don't know yet. Dunsparce, I don't know. I think it's an A tier pick. I think it's not like top S tier yet, but it's a very good Pokemon nonetheless. It could be S tier depending on how things play out, but it's a very, very good Pokemon nonetheless. Like having access to both Astonish as well as Roar, giving it two different kind of playstyles for it as well, which is kind of cool. Both of them got buffed, so very good Pokemon for sure. We're going to have the Dusclops next. Having access to the buffed Shadow Punch is going to be cool for it, but I don't think it's going to be too impactful, unlike the evolution of it, because the evolution also has access to Astonish, which I think the pre-evolution doesn't have. And so we already had a video before that with this Pokemon in there as well, showcasing a little bit on how good it is, and definitely one of the stronger Pokemon for the upcoming season. We're going to have Metal Claw on the Empoleon. I have to put into B tier for now. Depends on how they make Metal Claw. If they're going to give it a +1 buff on the energy generating side, it might be not as ideal. But if it's going to be a +2, this Pokemon is going to be top S tier again, which I would like to see. Metal Claw is a little bit of a difficult one to buff, to be fair, because of Zacian, but I don't know how much they're going to care about the Master League, so I honestly would not mind if they're going to buff it by +2, and then, yeah, Metal Claw Zacian might be the best Pokemon for the Master League, but honestly, I could care less. Next Pokemon, I actually think is going to be really, really good for the new season as well, going to be Fortress. Fortress is going to have access to Volt Switch, going to give it a better Faust move, but actually the buff itself doesn't really help it that crazy much. I think the thing that I think is the best for this Pokemon is a typing. Being able to beat both Poison plus also Fairy types is going to be crucial, especially as you have access to also Earthquake, which is going to give you coverage against something like a Clodsire, and I think that's going to be very, very cool for it. Can't wait to see that, and we can move on to the next one. Furfrou getting buffed with Sucker Punch. Cool one there, but also kind of getting nerfed with Surf, most likely they're taking a little bit more energy onto it, so very likely not going to be as ideal. We have Gastrodon. think this Pokemon is going to be a good, but again, Body Slam got nerfed quite a bit, so it's not as good as people expected before, like I expected before, so I'm gonna put into the B tier. I don't think it's going to be too crazy, but it's definitely going to be something that you can run for sure. Maybe A tier is also kind of like somewhere between B and A, I think is kind of accurate for it. We have Girafaruq next, having the buff Trailblaze, going to help us out a bit more with the confusion damage adding up. Very cool typing, but there's a better variant of it later on, which you're going to see as well. So I'm going to put it into the B tier. Golurk, going to be very cool. Getting buffed with Mud Slap plus Shadow Punch is going to be very impactful for this thing. I can't wait to try it out. I think it's going to be one of the coolest Pokemon for the new season, for sure. Plus their Greedent got buffed with Trailblaze, but I don't think it's actually a buff because of Body Slam nerfs, so I think I'm going to put it actually into the D tier. I don't think it's going to have more play, which I think is good. I don't think Greedent needs more play, to be fair. What needs more play, I guess, it's going to be Gastrodon. Gastrodon is going to have access now to Brutal Swing, and you might think, oh, instant S tier, way better than before. Actually, don't think so, because it doesn't have a great secondary charge move. This is kind of the issue for this Pokemon now. While everything else kind of got buffed with Brutal Swing with that kind of thing, you have already Dragon Claw, which is a little bit worse, I think 5 damage less, but you don't have like a good nuke alternative unless you want to go for a double dark moveset of like Crunch plus Brutal Swing, so don't think it's going to be too impactful for this Pokemon. Next up, Hariyama. I want this Pokemon to be good. I don't think this Pokemon is very good right now, even with Force Palm, it's not going to be the greatest. Can change again though, but it needs a better secondary charge move, like having only access to like Heavy Slam as your best secondary charge move is kind of ridiculous, and so I don't think it's going to be too great. Still kind of want to try it out. Honestly, Hariyama is like the one Pokemon that I always want to have like being good, because it's like one of the Pokemon's ideal for being a Shadow Pokemon because of the low defense and high attack, but like insanely high HP stat. Kind of on how like the Shadow bonus works, is one of the best Pokemon to have it. So it's going to be kind of interesting. Can't wait to try Haunter. Haunter going to be so much fun now. Also like Shadow Claw then with Ice Punch coverage is going to be so cool to run, and also good answer for those fairy type Pokemon. You're most likely gonna drop actually Ice Punch this season, I would say, because of all flying type Pokemon getting nerfed, and you'd rather go for Sludge Bomb on it to beat those fairy type Pokemon. But I think Haunter is going to be back in the meta, gonna be a cool Pokemon for sure. Jumpluff also gonna get a little bit of a buff with Fairy Wind, but not too crazy. Counter on Lediva or Ledian would have been really cool before it got nerfed, but like right now I don't think this Pokemon is going to be too crazy, but I could be wrong with it as well, but I don't think it's going to be too crazy. We have Licky, going to be an A tier pick in my opinion, going to be the better Lickitung now after Body Slam got nerfed and Rollout getting buffed. It's actually going to be better than the pre-evolution for the first time here, so Licky is going to substitute or like be like the replacement for Lickitung, which is going to be an interesting change. Having a little bit less bulk, but having better fast move plus better coverage as well, going to be quite an interesting one. Logex getting a Sucker Punch buff, kind of cool. Doesn't really make it too crazy though, but it has a little bit of potential against potentially those Psychic-type Pokemon getting a little bit better. We're going to have Lunatone, Psywave, very likely going to be like big buff this season with like +2 energy, which is going to be cool. Lunatone, I'm going to put into the B tier though still. Don't know how good it's actually going to be, because I think it also had a Rock Slide, which got nerfed, which I think was also one of the reasons why it most likely got nerfed. So don't think it's going to be too impactful. We have Machamp, going to be very impactful. If you saw my video towards see the meta overview, already going to be linked in the end card anyway. Machamp was one of the best Pokemon there, thanks to Karate Chop, thanks to Stone Edge, because they haven't substitute there for the Rock Slide, and especially with Karate Chop like generating more energy now, making Stone Edge more eligible, like easier to get to, plus Cross Chop buff from last season, making this Pokemon insanely good. Machamp to the top there, very good Pokemon. What is also going to be very good is going to be the Malamar having access to that fast move of Psywave, very likely going to be top tier as well. Marowak actually going to have a little bit of a problem now, because Rockslide got nerfed. Marowak is not going to be as ideal as I thought it would be, and so I'm gonna actually put it into the B tier. Don't think it's going to be too crazy. Same goes for the Alone variant. While it got buffed, and while it's kind of cool it got buffed, it's still not going to be like crazy impactful in that kind of case. That I don't think it's going to be the crazier one. Maybe actually like, I don't know, the Alone one maybe has a little bit more play, beating something like those poison types plus fairy type Pokemon as well. So maybe it actually has a little bit more play. I think just based on the type, I'm actually gonna put it into the A tier, because I think it deserves there a little bit more. Mienshao got buffed with Brutal Swing, got buffed with Force Palm, and gonna end up in the lowest tier. Fun Pokemon, it's nothing more and nothing less. Like this Pokemon, just doesn't have the stats for PvP. It has like 1400 rating. It's not great. Like, it is just not great. What is a little bit better is going to be Miltank. I think it's going to be a big buff there as well. Definitely has kind of similar towards what you see with Licky, having very similar kind of stats and moveset. Going to be an alternative if you want to have that. But this has like Thunderbolt and Ice Beam as coverage, which might be even better than the Shadow Ball / Earthquake on the Licky. So that's going to be an interesting Pokemon for sure. Those definitely going to be a bit better. We're going to have next up here the Ninetales, gonna be a slight buff. Normal Ninetales here with Fire Spin, gonna put into C tier. Not going to be too crazy, but again, it could have actually type-wise a little bit of an advantage this season because it beats like something like Ariados plus the Clefable. Next up, going to be a Rangaroo. Based on what I saw, like this Pokemon is very likely going to be very good. The typing is very good. Having Brutal Swing plus Trailblaze being both buffed on this Pokemon with Confusion damage is insane. I think this Pokemon is going to have a lot of play this season. The next one, Pangoro, I think also has a lot of play, but I think the typing going to be a little bit of a letdown for it, so I'm gonna put it into the A tier. Still, very good Pokemon though. Like, the fast move of Karate Chop is going to be so insanely strong that this Pokemon definitely gonna get a big update there. We're gonna have Brutal Swing now on Persimmon. Sadly, counter got nerfed, so gonna be lowest tier for sure, not really ideal. Ribombee getting Draining Kiss, not going to be ideal at all as well. We're going to have also here I think Tapu Lele getting Draining Kiss, not ideal at all, you don't need it at all. I think Draining Kiss might get buffed, but because also Clefable got Draining Kiss, they are kind of limiting themselves with that. I think that was a little bit of a silly play for them. We have Whimsicott, maybe going to have a little bit more play this season, but I'm going to put into B tier again. Small buff on Fairy Wind there, which is kind of cool for it, but again, it's not going to be too crazy. Most of the counter users, which before kind of wanted to counter, are gone. A lot of the water types are going to be gone because of Mudshot being nerfed, so it might be a little bit of a Pokemon that seems better on paper, or like before that, but I think because of the meta shift, it might be a little bit worse this season. Primeape, going to actually have access to also Karate Chop, being a little bit of a substitute if you don't have a Machamp. Still, Machamp is a bit better, especially with the Shadow variant, especially with the coverage of Stone Edge. It's most likely going to be the better the better Karate Chop user here for the meta, but it's definitely going to be an interesting one to see on what this Pokemon can do here, the Primeape, so for sure something to look out for. We're going to have the next one, Runerigas. I think it's going to be B tier. Got a buff with Brutal Swing, got a buff with Astonish, but neither of them going to make this Pokemon crazy good. Also, of course, struggling against one of the biggest meta threats, which we're going to take a look at later on as well, making it B tier for me. We have Sableye next, getting access to the buff variant of the Power Gem. It's not going to be the craziest update. I think it's going to be somewhere in C tier, especially as Fairy-type Pokemon are going to take over. Metal Claw on Sandslash could be very crucial. Depending on how they do it, Metal Claw might be the way to go on the alone Sandslash, being able then to counter those Fairy-type Pokemon even easier, and having great coverage would be really cool for it. So if Metal Claw gets +2, this Pokemon is going to be somewhere in like A to S. If it's going to be +1, it's going to be somewhere in the B tier, but cool Pokemon nonetheless. We have the Slowbro, which I think again is going to be less because of the move it got, which is also again Brutal Swing, but mainly because of the typing itself, why it's going to be very good. Having great coverage as well in this Pokemon. Surf might actually be not as ideal anymore. I guess Surf got a little bit of a buff in terms of the damage output at least, so maybe it's going to be even better still. But I could see even that Brutal Swing and Sludge Bomb being the way to go on this Pokemon, but we have to see for the future on how that's going to be. Then we're going to have the Spiritomb here. Spiritomb getting access to the buff of Sucker Punch plus Rock Tomb. Somewhere in C tier, it's not going to be too great. Sadly, it still needs a better fast charge move, but we don't have that yet. Draining Kiss on Togetic, not going to be too impactful. I guess like Fairy Wind is going to be a little bit better on it, so I'm going to put it a little bit higher. Yeah, I know Fairy Wind is going to be a bit better on this thing. Again, I guess Ribombee also has Fairy Wind, so we can put it a little bit higher up, but it's not going to be too crazy impactful for it either. We have Tropius next, having Brutal Swing. Going to be crazy on this thing. Like, this thing is definitely going to be one of the best Pokemon to use again. Not with Razor Leaf anymore since the nerf, but still going to be very good with Leaf Blade. We have the Hisuian variant of Typhlosion, not really needed with Nightshade. Nightshade is kind of sadly a little bit of a lost cause. Same goes for Zora and Zorak. I don't think it's going to be too impactful. Unless it's going to be 45 energy, then we might talk a little bit differently. We don't know the energy level yet. I go based on 50. If it's 45, it might be a little bit of a different story, but right now, not ideal. Actually, what is ideal is Trailblaze Swift variant of Ursaring, which is now actually a very solid play. And so I think this Pokemon kind of deserves a little bit of a buff there, and a little bit of a higher up ranking there. I think it's going to be a very cool one. I know we're going to end up with like 2 very good Pokemon. We're going to have the Galarian Weezing, which I would expect is going to be S tier. Fairy Wind going to get a buff, Brutal Spring going to get a buff, great coverage, great typing for the current meta, being able to beat other kind of Fairy type Pokemon. That's going to be one of the strongest Pokemon to run, and Wigglytuff is going to beat them all. Wigglytuff is going to be the main meta threat for the season, and this is going to be my short rating here for the new season. There are of course a lot more kind of updates. I of course separated the buffs from the nerfs because it's a little bit difficult to put them all into one tier list together because they're like very different in how they kind of function. But that's going to be it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed, and I'll see you then. Bye bye.